from January to the end of April, then from May to the end of August, then from September to the end of December. And this semester we have actually 8 courses running. And this, me being here, this initiative to spread the courses around the city a little bit more, introduce people to new spaces if they don't know about them. This center, mashallah, has been here for a while, and we want more people to kind of know about it and get involved, and to make, inshallah, ilm more available to everyone. So that's why we're kind of moving around. Sheikh Luay is doing in the Hyde Park, and I have Sheikh Al-Fattah doing actually right now at the Wellness Center. So there's a little bit of movement, inshallah. The goal is to bring, inshallah, ilm closer to people. This is a short semester. So there's a semester a year where Ramadan exists. Wherever that Ramadan exists, that's a short semester. So from January to April, the short semester because Ramadan is split in the middle. So we had to choose courses that could be run in 9 to 10 sessions tops. So we had to choose like topics that we could actually get in that. So I wouldn't do like usul fiqh, for example, and it wouldn't work. You need at least 14 sessions, and they have to be an hour and a half. So I chose this course because I can hopefully compress it into 9 to 10 sessions and get it done. Because in Ramadan, even if you said you would attend, I wouldn't attend. So it's not going to work out. So we're going to run, inshallah, 9 sessions until Ramadan, and then there may be a session right after Ramadan, and then the exam will be at the end. My courses, the way I run them, every teacher in the IDA runs their courses differently. So there's no 2 people who do exactly the same. The way I do it is you'll have access to the Google Classroom. If you don't, you speak to one of the brothers, inshallah. Do I have anyone here who can help me with this today? I don't think so. So I have Sister Neda, who's usually around, to help with that piece. But you can get access to the Google Classroom, and in the Google Classroom there'll be classwork. And I'll put there all of the resources that you can use, and these slides. These slides are usually what you're going to depend upon. I build them as the course goes along, so they won't be complete. If you look at them now, they won't. They'll just have today's stuff, and not even all of today's stuff. And then I'll keep on updating them and adding them. In order for you to benefit from this course, you're expected to take notes and to kind of write your own stuff along. I won't really ask any questions outside of what it is that I teach within the course. My exams are usually open book for those who want to take certificates. You don't have to write any exam or even apply to the course or even be a part of the Google Classroom. You can just attend. It's more than welcome. But for those who are actually a part of it and want to, my exams are open book. I don't require people to memorize stuff. But I do ask questions where you have to prove me you understood what it is that we did, that you actually comprehended and I usually have 1 or 2 assignments throughout the course that are, again, is for you to prove that you're understanding what this is about and really not just to regurgitate information. That's not how I don't care for that very much. So that's kind of a quick preview of what this is going to look like. So every Wednesday, inshallah, after Isha, we'll do it. Hopefully next week we'll do up front so that there's more space. This seems to be a little bit uncomfortable for people to attend. And if you want access to the, even if you don't want to write the exam, you can get access to the material, just as a final kind of piece. Even if you don't have any intention of writing any exams at all, that's totally fine. You can still get access to the Google Classroom and all of the resources and all the material just for your own talab, just for your own benefit. You want to learn. At some point in the course, we'll send out an email asking if you're a credit student or an audit student. No big deal. Just tell us if you're a credit, just so we can actually account for how many people will be writing exams, so we can plan it out appropriately via time and all that stuff. So it's really not it's not a question that's trying to lead you in your answer. We just want to know who's doing it so I can account for that, inshallah ta'ala. But everyone else is welcome to attend, have full access and be involved, inshallah ta'ala. So there's no prerequisite for this course. I think that was the biggest mistake. We're still learning how to do proper communication when it comes to these things. There's no prerequisite for the course. It's just in order for you to, if you're a student with us and you've been taking some courses, if you want the Hadeeth, the first level of Hadeeth certificate, you have to attend the first 21 Hadeeth that I'll be doing, and Sheikh Ziyad's second 21, because he did the second 21. So you have to attend. Even you don't have to. It doesn't matter what sequence. So if you haven't done Sheikh Ziyad's 21, that's fine. You can just do mine and then do his later, because he repeats every couple of semesters, and you can do them online. As a last kind of FYI, if you're someone who actually wants to attend courses in Arabic, there are courses that are given purely in Arabic. And Sheikh al-Janabi, Allah khair, kind of championed that on behalf of everyone. So he does, he's doing fiqh Hanafi in Arabic, he's doing Arabic grammar in Arabic. Sheikh Ziyad taught the second 20 Hadith in Arabic as well. He did it in English, but he also did it in Arabic as well. I haven't done anything in Arabic yet. I may, but we'll see how that goes. So this is the first 21 Hadith of the Arba'in Nawawiyya. Now, I do assume that most people have attended something like this at some point in their life. Like it's very rare that you, not to shame anyone, if you haven't, that's totally fine. You'll actually, I look forward, you'll hopefully really enjoy this. But most people have read them at some point or memorized parts of them as a young person or looked at them. So I don't want this to be a boring, kind of repetitive halaqah or in terms of the stuff that you're talking about. So I'm going to try and make it a little bit more, I'm going to kind of go in different directions in terms of trying to help you understand the beauty of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the importance of knowing it, and maybe doing some commentary on the hadith themselves. So never fails. Never, wallahi, not never. I have never ever done anything and it works. Mustahil. Once it does, I'll be in awe of whoever did. Mustahil. There has to be something wrong. Has to be something wrong. You do have your gun. I don't know, do I need to turn it on?
No, it was on. It was on.
Was it on? Here, okay. Oh, it's working. All right, so it was my fault. All right, yes. I take that back then. But I go back. Okay. So just the course objectives. So this is what I want to achieve for the group, inshallah ta'ala. So memorize the first 21 hadith from Nawawis. Now I put it there to see how many people would message me. Just to see how many people would message me. And I got, alhamdulillah, like 10 messages of people. Do I have to memorize it? No, you don't have to memorize the whole thing. And that's not what the point here. But I'm trying to encourage you, inshallah, to memorize as many of these hadith as possible because many of them are short. So I will ask you to memorize maybe 6 of these hadith, and I'll put that as a requisite. Now, how will I know that? It's very simple. It's how Shaykh al-Sha'al allowed us to, I'll tell you, this is a true story. This is how you pass his hadith course and first level hadith course. So he would, for him, he would teach obviously hadith and he would go through different hadith, but then a part of the course was to read something called Jami' al-Usul. Jami' al-Usul is written by Ibn Athil al-Jazari, and it put together 15 collections of the major collections of hadith altogether. And it's like 13 volumes. So he told us at the beginning of the year that the requirement is to read it, nothing, just read the whole thing. So people, whatever people did, but students did what 2 students did. And we didn't know how he was going to actually assess us. So this is how he assessed us. The last lecture, he had a big, those blue, in Medina they make musahif. So that big blue mushaf, that really big one. He had it and you would come and you would put your hand on it and you would swear that you read the whole thing. That's how we passed the course, right? Out of maybe 40 of us, 5 of us did it, and the rest of us had to repeat it the year after because no one really read the whole thing. I had to read it throughout the summer. So that's how I'll do it. It'll just be a question. Did you memorize 6 hadith? And then you either say yes or no. And it's up to you. This is inshallah. If you want to lie about that, then you have other problems. Yeah, this is not going to be your biggest problem. But that's how we'll assess it. Again, this is just an act of encouragement for you to kind of know some hadith by heart. You can choose the ones that you find most interesting to you, that you benefited from the most, if you like. So that will be one thing. And then know the meanings, inshallah. So I'll comment on each hadith in terms of the important points that you should learn. We'll explore why Imam Nawawi chose these hadith, and why the collection became so popular. Throughout the course, I will make points regarding that because I think it's important. Why his 40 just became so, till this day, his 40 hadith are extremely well known. And a lot of other scholars, by the way, put together their 40s or 50s or 30s. Like a lot of people tried that and it just kind of died off over time. But his 40 just kind of continued. There's different reasons for that, and inshallah I'll share with you. And why it is that he chose them specifically. We'll learn, inshallah, the fundamentals of hadith narration. I'll explain to you slowly, inshallah, through every hadith will be add a little piece. We'll talk about what it means, like who exactly is the Qadi Muslim and the people like them, and just how do you narrate a hadith appropriately, and how this knowledge kind of came to be. This is not a course for the history of hadith, which would go into detail regarding that, but I want to give you the fundamentals of how hadith is narrated. We will observe a little bit how scholars interpret a hadith differently and derive rulings. So there'll be a few hadith that have a fiqhi aspect to it or a theological aspect to it, and I'll point out how scholars read the same hadith. In addition to the other sources of evidence, they came to different conclusions, right? And those conclusions are all valuable and all correct and all acceptable and have merit. But it's just people interpret words or interpret language or interpret what the Prophet ﷺ said differently, and that's important to understand because there's always different ways to understand what's being said by him ﷺ and other sources of evidence. So I'll give you examples of that. We'll observe how scholars interpret hadith differently, resulting in the difference of opinions within schools of jurisprudence, and then we'll learn the lessons, inshallah, and each hadith teaches. Like we'll make sure that the lesson is clear. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for you to walk away with at the end of the course. We only have 9 sessions. I will aim to do a 10th session, inshallah, right after Ramadan. So each session will go through 2 hadith, inshallah. Some of them will be very long, so not some of them. each hadith requires like multiple lectures in order for me to really dissect it appropriately, talk about every aspect of it, and explain it in depth. So this is a first level hadith text or first level hadith study. So the aim is for it to be not that deep, but to give you enough for contemplation, reflection, and benefit, inshallah ta'ala. But for sure, when I finish, I move on from one hadith to the other, I am not claiming by any measure that this is all you need to know about this hadith and there's nothing more to benefit from. Not at all. I'm just pointing out things for you to kind of reflect and think about, inshallah ta'ala. So we start with ta'ala with the first. So again, I need help. Just maybe sit there, just do the thing for me. Was that you or me? That was you, I think.
No, that was me.
Yeah. All right. You can leave it here for a few seconds.
Is it working?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, just a second.
That's right. You just leave it here for a second. Okay. So the first hadith, I'll read it for you in Arabic quickly. عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها وامرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. The following is in the collection that Imam Nawawi wrote. So this is not commentary from some other scholar. This is what Imam Nawawi actually put. قال رواه إماما المحدثين أبو عبد الله محمد بن إسماعيل بن إبراهيم بن المغيرة بن بردزبة البخاري الجعفري وأبو الحسين مسلم بن الحجاج بن مسلم القشيري النيسابوري رضي الله عنهما في صحيحيهما اللذين هما أصح الكتب المصنفة. So today we'll talk a little bit about that last piece because it's important. So the hadith itself, we may take a moment and kind of look at that. The hadith itself, the Prophet ﷺ, this hadith is very, very famous, obviously, and you've heard it many, many times in your life, and I'm not going to really offer too much that's new to it. But Sayyidina al-Khattab tells us the Prophet ﷺ indeed actions bin niyat, meaning they are based on their intentions. Now that phrase alone, that phrase, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, is a phrase that I remember it took us 3 lectures, to get through the linguistic aspect of it. Just the linguistic aspect of it from an Arabic perspective. Because of the innama at the beginning, and then bin niyat. So there is something here, when he says innama al-a'mal, innama means exclusively. A'mal, deeds. Bin niyat, now what is the ba actually, what is the ba in English? How do you translate the ba from Arabic to English? What exactly do you say? Because ba is a proposition. So here he's saying actions are according to intentions. This is an interpretation. This is an interpretation of the text. It's not really what the text is saying, literally speaking. Because there's different ways to actually understand what he's saying, alayhi salatu wasalam, which is why this hadith is so influential and important, because they take from it at least 5 or 6 different aspects of knowledge that is attached to the concept of acceptance of deeds, which is what this hadith really focuses on. So the ba piece, in exclusively deeds, bin niyat. Ba can mean are by, based on, with. All those interpretations are the usages of ba. But niyat are intentions. So based on intentions, by intentions, with intentions. So so exclusively deeds. What aspects of deeds? What is he talking about? Is he talking about reward? Is he talking about acceptance? Is he talking about validity? What is he talking about here? Alayhi salatu wassalam. So this is where scholars would go and they would dive deep into the linguistics, talking about what different options he could have meant, alayhi salatu wassalam. Some scholars said, Amal, what he means here is that the perfection of a deed is going to be based on its intention. It's going to be based on what intention that it had. The perfection of the deed. Other scholars said the validity of the deed will be based on. And these interpretations have implications on fiqh, on jurisprudence later. It has implications on how people later on will practice their deen, what they will comprehend as acceptable, valid, and unacceptable or invalid within the deen, because it's based on how you're going to interpret this. Now, if you continue the hadith, he gives a little bit more, alayhi salatu wasalam, to help us understand what it is that what he means. So I gave you two basic ways. Either the acceptance of deeds is according to intentions, or the perfection of a deed is according to intention, because really a deed can't be based on anything. It's a deed, it happened. What do you mean based on? It's a figure of speech. Whenever it's a figure of speech linguistically, then you have to figuratively understand it, or you have to fill in some blanks linguistically in order for you to interpret it appropriately. Whenever that's the case, you open the door for scholars to interpret. Scholars to interpret, not you and I, but scholars, people who have studied the Arabic language in depth and understand theology, understand fiqh, and know what the Prophet ﷺ said in other placements, and what the Quran is talking about in order to offer an interpretation that is acceptable. And I gave you 2 out of the 6 that they talk about. So if you continue the actual wording, وَإِنَّمَا, and again exclusively, إِنَّمَا is exclusivity. It's not emphasis. Now, inna emphasizes. Innama does not emphasize. Innama says this is the only thing. It's exclusive. There's nothing else. This is all it is. Right? I mean, there's no other. You can't really add anything to it. It's one thing, and this is what it is. Inna will emphasize. This is definitely what this is, but it could be other stuff. It could be something else. But innama says no. That's all it is. So exclusively deeds are based on intentions is a big deal, because that exclusivity piece is scary. Because I would hope that it would be based on a couple of other stuff. Because if I fail in intentions, maybe something else gets me through. But he's saying it's innama, right? So that and that's a repeated word that he uses in the different narrations for this hadith. Different narrations for it. I will show you a hadith that have different narrations and how those narrations will differ. I'm not going to do it for this one, or else we'll spend this whole course just studying this one hadith, and I want to make it, inshallah, a bit more interesting for you. But a hadith will have different narrations based on the books that they're narrated in. And the small differences is what scholars of hadith are really interested in. Says one of the narrations, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ, not بِالنِّيَّات, بِالنِّيَّة. And he's like, well, how that intention or intentions? No, it actually does differ. There actually is a difference. Because you say بِالنِّيَّات, there is an understanding that different actions can have different intentions. When we say بِالنِّيَّة, there's a comprehension that there's one basic intention that has to exist for deeds in order for them to work. And then you just have a different way of looking at it altogether. It's just interesting. So he says, وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. And again, he used innama exclusively, لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ, for every person, مَا نَوَى, whatever it is that they intended. Again, a figure of speech. What do you mean? Every person, for every person is what they intended. What are you talking about? Reward? Are you talking about, what are you talking about? Are you talking about benefit in dunya? What do you mean by this? So again, the scholars, because you're using the word innama, and you're making it exclusive, now it's actually dangerous. We have to, emphasis would be easy. If you just said inna likulli imri'in ma nawa, no problem, because emphasis opens the door for this to be the case and other things to be the case. When you say well innama, you're saying this is the only thing that you get. The only thing for each person, ma nawa, is what they intended. So what do you mean by that? And how do I go by intention here? And what if I intended Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ajr, not his satisfaction? And is that, are they the same? Are there differences between these intentions? Because you're intending different things. So I'm doing this in intention of not being punished, or doing this intention with the intention of being rewarded, or doing the intention of benefiting other people as an act of service, or I'm doing this to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or are they all the same, or are they a little bit different? And if they are different, do I get a different reward at the end? All of these are questions that kind of come up from just understanding what he's saying, alayhi salatu wasalam, here. So he gives a little bit more, so that it makes it easier for us to comprehend. فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Now this, for Arabic-speaking people, is clear, but when you do it in English, it kind of sounds a little bit weird. He said, and even the way he's translated, if you look at it, he said, anyone or everyone, I think anyone's a better way of looking, anyone who, whoever migrates with an intention for Allah and His Messenger, then the migration will be for the sake of Allah and His Messenger. So what does that mean? First of all, in order for this hadith to have any level of clarity for you, you have to ask, what does it mean to do something for the sake of Allah and His Prophet? What does that even mean? How do I do something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is the phrase that is used all the time. We use it all the time. What does it mean though? I did it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that have clarity? Is it universal clarity of what it means? Because we talk about, having a friend for the sake of Allah. Or what does that mean? How do I define that specifically? Because it's very important. So he's saying, فَمَنْ كَانَ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, the one whose hijrah, their migration, and he's using the context that the Sahaba understood. So, and this is the mastery of the Prophet ﷺ's hadith, is that he didn't just say, it wasn't always just this open. His hadith are very contextual. Very contextual. Meaning he's speaking to people. The Quran is more generic. For sure, the Quran, unless the Quran is specifically talking about an incident and it's there, the Quran uses general phrases so that people can. But the Prophet ﷺ, no, he will use very specific examples because he's speaking to his Sahaba. So this hadith came right after he made it to Medina. This is one of the earliest hadith that he actually said in Medina ﷺ. He got there. So hijrah was still an ongoing thing. The migration from Mecca to Medina, and from other parts of Arabia to Medina was still happening. So he pointed this out, that if you're hijrah, imagine this deed. Is there a deed that you can think of within that time that was more noble than leaving wherever you were and going to the Prophet ﷺ? Could you imagine doing something that vast and difficult and it not being for the right reason? We can all imagine doing something simple and it not being for the right reason, and we get nothing for it. But I'm talking about you getting up, picking up, and moving from, and this is not in 2024, where moving, no, this is back 1,400 years ago, where moving was not really something people did often. Like, you didn't move from where you were. Wherever you were born is most likely where you would die. And if you were going to leave that area, you needed an army to make sure that you would get where you were going securely. And even if you were going somewhere, you wouldn't even be welcome to go anywhere. This is within Arabia. If you spoke the language and had a background of appropriate lineage, you still wouldn't be welcome. A Qurashi going and moving to Medina, that's insane. It would only do that if he was banished. He was kicked out and they were told you're not allowed to come back anymore. And even then, they wouldn't go live in a city. They would choose a nomad life. They would go and actually just have a tent somewhere that doesn't keep on moving, because they would not be welcome to actually go into another place unless they become a mawla. The concept of mawla, where you attach yourself to another name, another family name, you become adjacent to them or associated with them. If you had your own family name, you wouldn't want to do that. I'm just making it clear that it's not easy. It wasn't easy to pick up and just leave. No one did this. But they did it, and the Prophet ﷺ did it, and they left. It was a big deal. So he took this one deed that is extremely, extremely difficult and very important, and Islamically is majestic. Al-Muhajirun, isn't that what they're called? That's what they're called. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about them, He uses the phrase Al-Ansar, because of the beauty of what they did. They stood by him alayhi salatu wasalam, and Nusra, they offered him aid and support. And then he calls the other group Al-Muhajirun because of the beauty of what they did, that they actually did hijrah. So he took this one deed alayhi salatu wasalam that had that degree of merit and importance and significance, and he said, if you do that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Again, and you can open for interpretation. What do you mean by فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ? Mean the reward, the benefit, then you'll be waiting, then it'll be documented that way. It'll be, what does that mean? Right? So most scholars say that the reward will be based on that. That will be documented as done for that reason. It'll be documented as done for that reason. That matters. What you did, your deed is going to be documented. So you want it to be documented for the right reason, or else we're in a difficult position here. If it's written as done, but it was done for the wrong reason, it's a problem. So then, well, what if I prayed and I didn't do it for the right reason? So the question becomes, is it valid, my prayer? Right? So it's based on this hadith. It depends on how you interpret it. So a very small group of scholars said, no, it's not valid. The majority say, yes, it's valid. It's just not going to be accepted. And there's two different things. That's why when someone comes and asks me, what I did, is this acceptable? I say, I don't know. I can tell you if it's valid or not. I can tell you if there's validity. I can't tell you if there's acceptance. You may do it invalidly and get accepted. And you can do it in a valid way and get not accepted. So there's something there that I don't know about, I can't control. You have to actually spend time understanding. Because the validity is based on a rigorous number of rules. Here's the rule. Did you make wudu? Check. Did you turn towards Qibla? Yes. Was the time appropriate? Yes. You pray, satart awratak? Yes. Valid then. Valid. Acceptable? I have no idea. How do I know? I don't know. I don't know. My job is to tell you if it's valid or not. Meaning, do you need to do it again, or are you fine as it is? Acceptability, acceptance is completely different. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's domain. Well, how do I know if it's going to be accepted or not? Well, that's why this hadith is the first hadith in the majority of books of hadith. In the majority of books of hadith and other disciplines. Other disciplines, the scholars would write the book, and at the first they would put this hadith at the beginning to remind themselves of the importance of this concept. So the Prophet ﷺ chose this very, very important example of hijrah. And then he said, وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ, and whoever's hijrah or migration, لِدُنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا, because they felt that there was an opportunity. Yeah, there was some business opportunity by going to somewhere new or changing where they were. Or they wanted to pursue marriage. They thought the for some, and there's an example of that actually in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, a man doing it. And he did hijrah not because he wanted to be Islam, because the lady told him, I'm not marrying you until you come, and so he went. He had no intention of accepting Islam or nothing. فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. That's the wording here. That his migration is to what he migrated to. Again, this figure of speech. So it's going to be rewarded or documented as occurring for whatever reason he did it. That documentation is going to have weight on the Day of Judgment, for sure. You're going to pick that documentation, and then that's going to come. Why did you do it? This is why you did it. Well then, because you have to argue why it is that you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you something for it. What you do is things in life. You want to come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, I want reward for this, or I want sins to be forgiven, I want sayyi'at to be removed, I want something for this. So in order for you to have that argument, he has to see that when you did it as an act of service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you can't prove that, then you really don't get anything in return. You don't have an argument. You did it for this reason, so go to that reason and ask it for its reward. Or if you already achieved it or received it, then you're good with that. That's why one of the scariest hadith that's in the collection of Muslim, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says, أول من تسعر بهم النار يوم القيامة, the people who are first thrown into the hellfire on the Day of Judgment. And he calls out ﷺ, a Quran reciter, a scholar, a philanthropist, and a shaheed, a martyr. These four people, the people that are role models in all societies and are looked up to. And they're asked, the reason they're asked, why did you do this? Why did you read? Why did you learn? Why did you teach? Why did you fight? Why did you give? And they would say, Ya Rabb, we did it for you. And the answer is, kadabt, no, you're lying. You did it so that this would be said, or this would be known, or this would become the... And it happened, meaning you gave the wealth so that you become known, famous for being generous. People said, mashallah, generous. And then they did. You were known all your life as generous. I owe you nothing. You didn't do it for me. Don't ask me for a reward if you didn't do it for me. Go to the ones you asked for. They'll give it to you. I have no interest in it. That's why this hadith is at the beginning of most books, because it's no joke. It's no joke at all. It's extremely important. Like the content of it, extremely, extremely important. It has to be. I was taught to think about tasih an-niyyah every single day, multiple times. This is a part of your Islamic toolbox. Every day, multiple times you ask yourself, why am I doing things? Am I doing it for a good reason, or am I doing it for some other reason? And you will never, I don't want to say never because it's not a scientific term. It's very difficult to perfect your intention. You're not required to have it perfect immediately. What you do have to, I'm just explaining to you, because this can be depressing what I just explained if you don't understand the part of it. So what you need is an awareness of the quality or lack of quality of your intention. That's what you need. You need an ongoing awareness of it. Because if you're not aware of it, then that's the problem. If you don't care, if you don't even think about it, and you're doing things for the wrong reason, then you're in danger. But if you are aware of your intention, and you continuously try to fix it, but it's not going very well, meaning you know that in your intention there's something missing, and you come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, I know that I did this, and I wanted to do it for you, but I didn't get it right, I can't seem to fix my intention, then you're still safe. Because you're trying. Because you're trying to perfect your intention. Perfecting it is almost impossible. It takes a lifetime of work for you to come to a point where the only reason that you did something is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing else was there. But the lack of awareness of that is dangerous, is a problem. If you don't care about this issue, if you don't think about it, if you don't contemplate it, if you're not putting an effort to perfect it, then that's when you lose. That's when you're in danger, because now you've let it go. So as long as you're continuously aware of it, and you're trying your best, even though you're not doing well, you're doing your best, and you're turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the best I can. It's not good. I know it's not good. I hope you accept it, even though it's not good. Next time I'll try and make it better. Then inshallah, things are acceptable. There's hope, inshallah, that you'll have something accepted. So that's what you need to do with this. But the reason this hadith is so important is because the Prophet ﷺ, in my opinion, and this may be funny to you, he just used this one here. Oops. Well, this is weak. All right. He used the innama. That's why. The concept is clear. But he used innama. You may not know that. That's something to think about. The reason this hadith matters so much is because of that innama. It's not because he said amalu bin niyat. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that your deeds are only as good as the intentions behind them. You don't even accept a deed that has a good intention. If you find out that someone did something for you and it wasn't for the right reason, you don't want it anymore. If someone does something for you and they had some other gain, there's some secondary gain that had nothing to do with doing it for you, you feel cheated, you feel cheap, and you don't want it anymore. If they did it because, well, they could afford to do it, or they needed to do that so they can submit something to the government, then you don't, because you would prefer if they just said to you, by the way, I'm doing it, but this is my secondary gain, you're much more likely to accept that, but if they say that they're doing it for you, and there's some secondary gain, you are going to be very upset. So we know that already, but then he used, alayhi salatu wasalam, the term innama. He said exclusively. So now we have to hold our horses and get down a bit. All right, so exclusively, well, that's a game changer. I don't know how to do that. How do I do something with an exclusive intention of selflessness, meaning only for the sake of Allah? How do I do that? That's a lifetime, that's a journey of a lifetime, to be able to take yourself from that position to that, from A to B. And I think that's why this hadith is so important. Again, I'm not here to offer all of the answers, but that's what he says, alayhi salatu wasalam. And then Imam Nawawi actually takes a moment and he goes through by talking about the two great scholars. Rawahu was narrated by Imama al-Muhaddithin, the leaders of the Muhaddithin. Muhaddithin is a word used to describe scholars of hadith specifically. Ulama is a word that we use to describe people who have knowledge in every discipline of Islam. And Muhaddith is used to describe someone who is perfected or at the highest level of the knowledge of hadith specifically. And the leaders of the knowledge of the discipline of hadith by far within the Muslim Ummah are Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughira ibn Bardizbah al-Bukhari al-Ju'fi, and we'll talk about him in a moment, and Imam Muslim. And I'll give that a little bit of a breakdown of who they are in a moment. So we actually just took a moment to kind of point that out. Can we press the... It's not. Yeah. Doesn't want to listen. Yeah, go ahead. It's okay, there's not a lot of slides, so it's not that, just go one forward. And yeah, no, they're right there. So, who's Imam Bukhari? Can you go one more? So this is, one more, please. Sorry, did you not, this should be, so you have to always, did you download this? No, so don't download it, always keep it online. Because I always refresh stuff, like always. Okay, so Imam Bukhari, Muhammad ibn Ismail, he is a scholar who was born in 194 Hijri and died in 256. So he was born, the Prophet ﷺ passed away in the 11th Hijri. He was born 194 Hijri, so around 180 years after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. A lot happened in those 180 years. A lot happened in those 180 years, like a lot. So Imam Bukhari was born in what today is part of Uzbekistan. And at that point, Islam had obviously reached that area. And not only reached it, but it was one of the centers of Islamic knowledge. So rahimahullah, radiallahu anhu, Bukhari, he began his knowledge history, and I put a slide there from Wikipedia, really. Just know basic stuff about him. There's no basic stuff about his story, so you know exactly who it is that we're talking about. The person who spent the majority of his life, he didn't live very long. So 194 to 256, almost 60 years or so. So he died pretty young. But he spent 40 of those 60 years moving around from all across the Islamic world, learning from the scholars of hadith and teaching scholars of hadith, and putting together what we today call Sahih al-Bukhari, or Jami' al-Sahih, which is the name of the book. And we will do a course on the history of hadith and different types of books that were written and all that. But I just need you to know a little bit about Sahih al-Bukhari. The reason, and there's a question that I put here, why their collection considered to be authentic, is because of the criteria that he used to accept a hadith versus reject one. It was the criteria. He had one. And this was a big deal because 194 Hijri, so let's say 210 is when, or 250 when he was kind of doing his work, which is roughly the 9th century, the 9th Gregorian calendar base, in the 9th century. He had a scientific method in accepting historic narrations, right? So take that today and walk with it home, because they didn't come up with that type of stuff until maybe 250 years ago. So we were talking 500, 600 years ago, 1,000 and maybe 1,000 or so years ago. Rahimahullah had a criteria to accept historically based narrations, to connect them appropriately. This is why the knowledge of hadith is extremely valuable for Muslims, because it's a groundbreaking initiative that Muslims took that no other nation took before them. Every other religion, they have books and quotes of wisdom, but that's all they are, because they cannot swear with any degree, or they're not certain with any degree of certainty. They can't be for sure with any degree of certainty that what they're saying actually was said by the person that they're pointing it out to. They have no reason not to believe it, so they say, yeah, that's what we have. But for us, we use, no, it's sahih, so it's 75% that he said that, alayhi salatu, exactly the way that's being said. Is da'if, so it's like 25% that he said it that way, or said it to begin with. So we are able to actually authenticate something being said by someone 1400 years ago. That is an extremely valuable tool for us to have, because from that we can build our fiqh, we can have rulings, and we can talk about perception, we can talk about understandings and interpretations and practices. Without that, it's hard to understand the Quran altogether, because the Quran is very generic. You need the Prophet ﷺ example to be able to say, okay, that he said this, subhanahu wa ta'ala, he did this, now I understand what he's trying to do. I understand what this whole thing is about. So authenticating hadith is important. Imam Bukhari came up with the reason that the reason that is authentic is that not only did he have a criteria, he had an extremely rigid one. It was really difficult. Meaning, in order for you to be in his book, you had a lot needed to happen in order for your hadith to qualify to be in his book. Imam Muslim also did the same thing with a slightly less rigid criteria. But the lack of rigidity in comparison to Imam Bukhari still kept his hadith well above the level of authenticity. Well above, because Imam Bukhari was being really careful. That doesn't mean that the hadith that you read is equal to the Quran in terms of its authenticity. I'm not going to talk about that a lot. I talked about that in Usul al-Fiqh, and I went in some depth and detail explaining that. That's not what this course is for. But you need to know the difference. That the Quran was handed down from the Prophet ﷺ to 1,000 people. It was written at that time, and then it continued to be written and memorized and passed down 1,000 people by 1,000 people. So we know with 100% certainty that that's exactly what he recited ﷺ in exactly the same way. We have a law of mudud and ghunan, so we recited exactly how he did. Hadith is different. It's authentic, but it doesn't have that same level. So there's more margin of error. So you have to understand hadith. You have to be qualified and trained to be able to interpret hadith. So when we study a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you have to, if there's a specific ruling or there's specific understanding in it, you need to be very careful before. There's people, I call them the hadith snipers. So you don't do that. Don't come and shoot someone with a hadith. That, okay, this is what I read, you're not doing it, so this is what he said, unless you have taken this concept or this topic and studied all of the evidence from the Quran and from the Sunnah and from the interpretations of the scholars of the madhahib. Don't do that. Make sure you understand everything regarding this issue. Because he said that, alayhi salatu wasalam, you're lacking context, you're lacking linguistic perfection, you're lacking the ability to interpret, you're lacking maybe other stories that are different, where he said something different, alayhi salatu wasalam, we did something different, and there's reason for why. You're lacking that piece, so be careful. That's why it's important for us to, when we give nasiha, we talk about things that we take the time to fully understand what it is that we're talking about. And not just take a narration. The same thing goes for an ayah. You have to know exactly what everything is, because sometimes if you're reading it, translation doesn't always do a very good job. First of all, translation is never good. And then if you're reading it and you don't have good command of the language and a command of context, then you could easily be misled. So that's Imam Bukhari. Imam Bukhari is Persian in background. His great-grandfather, Bardizbah, was a Persian man. So his background, and you're going to find that a lot of the muhaddithin that we're going to talk about, their backgrounds are not Arab. They were people who came from different parts of the world, and their backgrounds were not of such. And Imam Bukhari is a great example. The names in the first aspect of his life, Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Mughil, after they accepted Islam, they used Islamic names. But then you go back far enough, it's Bardizbah, and that's not an Arabic name by any means. And that name was actually, and that gentleman, as far as we know, was not Muslim. Wallahu a'lam. And there's difference of opinion regarding these things, but I think it's worthy of pointing out. Imam Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj. And I have there's a slide that you can look at when you go home, inshallah. He is Naysaburi. Naysabur is a part of northeastern Iran today. That's where it is. But he is actually Qushayri. So he's actually Arab. From a very known Arab tribe that migrated from Arabia, and throughout the years, he was born probably 201 Hijri, and he died 260 something. So he's not that older or younger than Imam Bukhari, and he didn't really die that much later, but he was a known direct student of Imam Bukhari. Imam Muslim learned from Imam Bukhari. Imam Muslim learned the criteria of how to authenticate, and then he made some adjustments to it. But their books both continue to be the most authentic amongst all of the books that we have. And he's an Arab who was born somewhere in northern Persia, and he did the same thing throughout his life. He spent his life moving around, learning hadith and authenticating them and building his sahih. We talked about why scholars begin their collection with this hadith. Hopefully that's clear just by the explanation of the importance of the niyyah. It's almost as a reminder for themselves, because they're reminding themselves of why they're doing what they're doing. That it has to have a niyyah in order for their work to be accepted in the first place. And what are the difference between how Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim authenticated hadith? So, it's in Arabic. I'll try my best to translate it. And if anyone wants to help with that, feel free to help me out with translation. I don't like translating things. So if people help, they're welcome to do that. But I'll explain what he says here for you so you understand. So some differences between Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim in terms of authenticating. إمام بخاري يشترط في المعنعن ثبوت اللقية بين الراويين لكي يحكم باتصال السند. أما الإمام مسلم فإنه يكتفي بإمكان اللقية من انتفاء التدليس. So whenever the hadith has عن, so عن فلان عن فلان. عن in Arabic is different than سمعت. I heard, that's very direct. I heard him say it. عن means based on the authority of. What do you mean? Based what? So he said that to you? No, عن. So what? What is that? So عن, they don't like it. Muhaddithin don't like عن. Say حدثني, say he told me. Don't tell me عن. عن, there may be someone else who told you that he said it. There's that possibility. They don't like the word عن. So they like سمعت, حدثني, أخبرني. Like the words that are very direct, that I heard it from his mouth. He taught me. Right? So they take that seriously. So Imam Bukhari, whenever there was a عن in the hadith, the only way he would accept the hadith is that he had to have clear proof that these two people spent time together, one of them learning from the other. It had to be documented that this sheikh taught this other person. So if one person is saying, عن شيخي فلان, or عن imam fulan, hold on. I need to know, since he didn't say حدثني or سمعت, he may have good intention, he may actually have heard it, just didn't use that wording properly. So he'll say, did this person meet that person and listen to them? And if that's the case, then he'll accept the hadith, or else he won't. Imam Muslim said, no, I'm okay with the possibility of them meeting, meaning they were when this person was born and when this person died, and where they lived, there's a possibility of them meeting. And the person who said an does not have a reputation of something called tadlis. Tadlis is where you don't specifically use that a lot. You use words that are ambiguous in terms of narration too much, and the scholars get a little bit suspicious of you. And they find out that maybe you had someone in the middle. It's not like they were trying to make things up. No. They were very good people. What they were doing is just lacking a little bit of honesty. Instead of saying, I heard from Doctor, from Am, you just say, the Am said. Did you hear from him or someone else? No, but the guy who told me I know is trustworthy. I know that. But you be honest, tell us exactly. We need to know. Because the farther the sanad, the higher the probability of error. Of human error, not of lying, of human error. It's just error. What's an acceptable amount of error? 3%? Right? If you have a chain of 6 people, 3 times 6, there you go. 18%. There being error. We're not talking about anyone lying or anyone making something up. No, just error. Just, you ever seen those practices where I stand here, and then people stand, and then I whisper something, he whispers something, and then they compare what I said at the beginning with the person said at the end, and you're like, what? Or they draw, and it's a drawing. So human beings, when it comes, that's why the Imam Bukhari was very specific in who it is he was accepting from. So another example, Imam Bukhari يخرج عن الطبقة الأولى وهو الثقات والطبقة التي تليها ومسلم يخرج عن هاتين الطبقتين وغيرهما. So Imam Bukhari only narrated a hadith from people. So scholars of hadith actually made levels, rankings of scholars of hadith, or people who you could narrate from. They ranked them in levels, rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, rank 3. Rank 4. Imam Bukhari, rank 1, rank 2. Everyone else, Allah know. Now, he did not listen to anyone else. Imam Muslim, he took rank 1, rank 2, and he chose and picked from rank 3 and rank 4. He took other people that he had good reason to believe that were trustworthy. But Imam Bukhari just said, nope, no one that's under rank 3. So rank 2, which is why is a bit more rigorous. And Imam Bukhari اشترط في الرواة ثبوت اللقاء والعمرة الواحدة واكتفى الإمام مسلم بالمعاصرة من غير اشتراط اللقاء. When the usage of the word was not an, it was actually حدثني or أخبرني, Imam Bukhari just needed that proof that they met at least once. If he said haddathani, or he told me directly, I just need evidence he met once. Imam Muslim, when that wording was used, all he needed was that they lived in the same area at the same time. He doesn't need proof that they actually met if the usage of the word is because the person who's saying this is not just some Joe, like some guy walking in, hey, haddathani. No, this is an imam, alim that people have all seen. So it's not, the narrators of hadith are not just regular people who are sitting around. No, these are ulama and a'imma. But even them, they were scrutinized. They were scrutinized down to their bone. Like if you're narrating hadith, you're going to be, you're going to be all over Twitter. Everyone's going to know everything about you. They're going to ask every question about you. And some scholars of hadith chose not to narrate what they had. They chose because they didn't want to be exposed anymore. They didn't want people looking into their business, so they would hold on to what they had. And of course, that was seen to be wrong, but it was a huge known discussion at the time that you shouldn't hold back hadith if you have it, but then they got scared because I don't want everyone to know every single mistake. They'll look in. Your marriage, children, wealth, money, inheritance, they'll look at everything about you, and it's very difficult. Back then, just like now, rumors will carry you quite far, and there are stories regarding that, but I don't want to make this too long, inshallah. Okay, so that's the first hadith, and that's what I wanted to kind of talk about. So this is a really long one. This is the reason Imam Nawawi put it as hadith number 2 is because hadith number 1 is the first hadith in the collection of Imam Bukhari, and hadith number 2 is the first hadith in the collection of Imam Muslim. So if you open Imam Muslim, the first hadith is this one. He puts this one. He loves this hadith. And there's a known, I think, did I put it there? I think I put it there. Did I? Yeah, so there's a question here, and I'll maybe answer it next time because I think we're going to run out of time. But Imam Bukhari did not narrate this hadith. He didn't narrate it. He doesn't have it in his collection. He does not have it in his collection. It's in many other collections aside from Imam Muslim, like Ahmad and Nasa'i and other chains of narration, but he didn't because of one person. Because of one person in the Senate, that person was not level ranked 2 and 1, he was ranked 3, he said no. Doesn't mean the hadith is not authentic, it just means Imam Bukhari's, for his criteria, he didn't add it into it.
I'm not sure what you mean by rank. Like what?
So the scholars of hadith, this is a little bit more complicated, this is more of a mustalah hadith question, but I'll tell you quickly. So there's a'imma called a'immatul jarh wa ta'dil. Al-jarh wa ta'dil is scrutinizing, not to get into the semantics of the translation, but it's scholars whose job were to scrutinize people who narrated, who gave narrations. And this is a complete Islamic discipline that maybe we don't really run in academies, we don't teach it, because you only learn it if you are going to specialize in the science of hadith, because there's no other reason to learn it. So A'immat al-Jarh wa Ta'dil are scholars who their only job was to scrutinize and break down the lives of people who narrated hadith, and based on all of that, they would rank people in terms of the quality of their narrations, and the reason to believe that they had less possibility of error. So for example, Abdullah ibn Luhay'a, a very known hadith narrator, a great Imam of Islam, all of his ahadith are da'if, all of them, because he lost all of his written hadith in a fire that burnt his home down. The poor guy, a fire burnt his home to the ground. So he narrated from his memory. Imagine this person had written like 1,000 pages. He memorized them word for word. But at the age of 85, he started to forget a little bit. So they said, all right, all your hadith is da'if right now because you don't have the written papers. So this is how they scrutinize things. So this gentleman, he never lied in his life. This person was a real imam and he knew what he was talking about. He just lost all of his written stuff that he could refer to, and he got old. And he continued, he made the mistake of narrating in old age, and then they found discrepancies. Hey, you said Muhammad ibn Hassan, not Muhammad ibn Hussein. And of course there's different people who mean that, and he has to take a moment to remember. And he remembers and he says it, well, I'm sorry, I don't know now. I don't know, so you're done. Now all your hadith are da'if. So this is how it was scrutinized. It was very rigorous. It wasn't a joke. And people of great caliber would be given that. So that's what I mean by ranking. So the rank scholars, Imam Bukhari had that original, or the beginning of that ranking. So he only accepted people from rank number 1 and 2. He didn't accept anyone under that. And those tabaqat, of course, are studied in the mustalah of hadith. We're not going to get into it here. It's too much time. It's interesting. People like it. You can find it very interesting if you're interested in learning. You spend a long time learning about figures. And there's women, by the way, for tabaqat. Tabaqa 1 and 2, there are ladies as well. Just as a kind of, yeah.
So basically, that's how we know their biographies, is through that.
Yeah. It was documented with the intention of scrutiny. And then Imam al-Dhahabi years later, Imam ibn Athir al-Jazari years later, Imam ibn Athir, the historian, not the muhaddith, not the guy who wrote the other book I was talking about, his brother. They wrote Usd al-Ghaba, and they wrote They wrote other books that talked about, for the lack of the name, a book that talked about all of the known figures in Islam. But where they got the biographies of these great imams is they went to the books of Jarh al-Ta'dil, where the scholars who had scrutinized all of these imam. So that's where they got the information from, and then they added to it the narrations or the stories of their piety from people who knew them. But they got the basics from that. That's why any time you open a book, وقال النسائي عنه ثقة وقال يحيى بن معين صدوق له أخطاء. Like you'll find like these little words that are very, you would feel a little bit, he's honest, but he makes mistakes. Very, very blunt. But he's a great imam, I know, but that's not my job right now to praise him. My job now is to tell you whether his hadith is going to be sahih, hasan, or da'if. So they're very blunt, very blunt. Imam Ahmad was one of those great people who actually did that. Who actually went in and scrutinized and went in. Imam Ahmad's musnad, by the way, it's all sahih if we got exactly what he put into it. But what we have today is what he put into it and then what his son put into it. His son added all these ahadith, so they had to go back and study his whole musnad and pick it all in and out, because Imam Ahmad himself knew exactly what he was doing, so he had it. But then he passed away, and he told his son to continue his work, and his son was not even remotely as good. Rahmatullah alayhi, great imam, was not even remotely as good as he was in terms of all of this information, all this knowledge. So he added a hadith that Imam Ahmad himself would have never added to his musnad. So he had a bigger book with a hadith that weren't always perfect. But that's, again, a completely different course. Please. So don't, look, be careful with asking me questions. We'll ruin this course. So you can ask me questions, I go on tangents, and then we don't end up getting to finish this. Because this stuff is very interesting for those who like it. Honestly, it's beautiful knowledge to learn. But again, I will try and touch on aspects of mustalah as we go through, enough for you to kind of be comfortable to narrate the hadith and know what to look for when you're trying to figure out if a hadith is sahih. I'll help you with that. I'll make sure if you're looking for a hadith and you want to know if it's right or wrong, what to look for, who to look for, and what differences those things are. And by the end of this course, inshallah, you'll have that clarity. But we do want to get through the first 21 if possible. So this long hadith that I'm not going to read for you, is because I know everyone here knows about it. And within the classwork, you'll find some videos put together by some of the mashayikh, some of them in North America, very nicely. The hadith are recited and explained. If you want to, again, I would advise you that these courses are taken for the benefit of ilm, not for just a certificate or whatever. It's for ilm. So take time and listen to read some of the resources, listen to them, and expand your understanding of these hadiths for your own knowledge, so you can talk about them. But this is called Hadith Jibreel. It's called Hadith Jibreel. This is famous. The other hadith, Hadith al-Niyyah, it doesn't really have a name, it's beyond famous. But this one is called Hadith Jibreel. It's where Jibreel alayhi salam would come to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in the form of a person. As pointed out here, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم ذات يوم إذ طلع علينا رجل شديد بياض الثياب شديد سواد الشعر لا يرى عليه أثر السفر ولا يعرفه منا أحد حتى جلس إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم فأسند ركبتيه إلى ركبتيه وضع كفيه على فخذه. So what he said, a man came to us this man, the way he looked, his clothing were pure white. His hair was dark black, right? You do not, and what he meant by that is that there is no evidence of this person traveling. Again, this is in the context of when you traveled, you were on a camel in the middle of the desert. So by the time you got where you were going, you looked pretty horrible. And you smelled pretty horrible, and you felt pretty horrible by the time you got there. You're not it's not how it is today. So someone walking in with clean clothing, a nice hairdo, all nice and black and shiny, and it does not look like he's traveling all day, and no one knows him. That's a big flag. Who are you? Who are you? Where do you come from? We know everybody here, and you don't look like you've been traveling, so who are you? So he came and he walked right in. Prophet ﷺ is sitting, all the Sahaba around him, walks right in, he sits down, he puts his knees on the ground, right, touching the knees of the Prophet ﷺ like this, and he takes his hands and he puts them on the Prophet ﷺ thighs. Very intimate, very close. The Sahaba are watching this and it's very weird, because no one does that. No one does that to the Prophet ﷺ. So he was doing this, he was trying to draw some attention, and he was trying to get people to really watch who is this person and why is he doing this? And he asked the Prophet ﷺ, technically 4 questions, but there are 3 questions that we need to know. And he tells him, tell me about Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ points out the acts, the rituals. Right? And then he says right after that, he says, Salat. Salat, correct. Salat, you are truthful. So فَعَجِبْنَا لَهُ in the hadith. فَعَجِبْنَا لَهُ يَسْأَلُهُ وَيُصَدِّقُهُ. We found this very weird. You ask him a question and then you tell him correct. either you're asking because you want to learn, or what are you doing? Are you testing the Prophet? Obviously for them that was completely not acceptable, so they didn't like it. But they were just watching and it was very interesting. And then he asked them, tell me about Iman. So he did the same thing. تُؤْمِنَ بِاللَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَكُتُبِهِ, as the pillars of Iman that you're well aware of. And then he said sabaqt. And then he asked him about ihsan. And he told him, and ta'bud Allah, for you to worship Allah as if you see him. If you don't see him, then he sees you. The very famous answer he gave, alayhi salatu wasalam. And then he asks him about the sa'ah. Tell me about the hour. And he's referring to the day of judgment. فَقَالَ مَا الْمَسْئُولُ عَنْهَا بِأَعْلَمَ مِنَ السَّائِلِ. Indeed, the one who's being asked about this is not more knowledgeable than the one who's asking about it. Meaning, if you're asking me timing, if you want to know when, I don't know. No more than you do. No one knows exactly when it's going to be. لا تأتيكم إلا بغتة في القرآن. It only comes to you all of a sudden. And then he asks about أماراتها. Tell me some of the signs, and he points out two signs. The first one, أن تلد الأمة ربتها, for a lady to give birth to someone who would later on rule her. And of course, this is a figure of speech that scholars have spent many centuries discussing what it's meant. The majority of them see that to be uquq, a form of uquq, meaning you give birth to someone who later on bosses you around and does not show bir to you. And that's what Wallahu alam is meant by this. There are different interpretations for sure that I'm not going to get into because it makes this whole thing way too long. But that's one of the understandings. The other one, وَأَنْ تَرَى الْحُفَاةَ الْعُرَاةَ الْعَالَةَ رِعَاءَ الشَّاءِ يُتَطَاوَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ. To see the ones, hufah, the ones who are shoeless, al-urah, the ones who are clotheless, meaning they didn't have enough money to buy shoes or clothes. Al-ala, who don't know how to make a living, meaning they live on handouts. Ri'a ash-sha, those who take care of a few goats or cows or cattle or livestock. Now, they are competing in how high their buildings are going to be, meaning a sudden influx of money to those who don't know how to manage it or don't use it for the best in the best manner, or will misuse it. So the misuse. So he's pointing out the misuse of resources. Alayhi salatu wasalam. And we don't get political on this. That's just what he said. ثم انطلق فلبثت مليا. Then this person who's sitting right in front of the Prophet ﷺ's face, asking this question, he gets up, he walks away. So everyone sat quietly for a moment, kind of wondering what just happened. He waited for a bit, رضي الله عنه عمر. ثم قال, and Nabi ﷺ said himself, because all were just waiting, يا عمر أتدري من السائل? You know who the guy who's asking was? قالوا قلت الله ورسوله أعلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his prophet know best, I don't know. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم إنه جبريل أتاكم يعلمكم دينكم. It's Jibreel, he came to teach you your faith. He wanted to ask. So what did he teach us? It's beyond me sometimes of how little we understand this hadith. How little we understand it, wallahi. This hadith, he came to teach us our faith. Very good. Jazakallah khair. Alayhi salatu wasalam, Jibreel, he taught us our faith. What did he teach us? He taught us that Islam is made of three pillars. You need three things to simultaneously exist in order for your Islam to be healthy and applicable and proper. The first one is the practices, the rituals, the stuff that you're going to do, which is what he uses here, alayhi to refer to as Islam. There is a very important relationship between the word Islam and Iman. Sometimes it's vertical, sometimes it's horizontal, and sometimes it's interchangeable. So Islam and Iman as words are used in different ways depending on the context, and it's not difficult to figure out if you're reading appropriately. Here, it's not a vertical one. It's not Islam here, Iman here. No, it's horizontal. There are three pillars of this deen. One is going to be practical, and sometimes it's used for vertical. If you open Surah Al-Hujurat, قالت الأعراب آمنا. The Arab, the Bedouin said, آمنا. قل لم تؤمنوا. Say, don't say that. Don't say آمنا. ولكن قولوا, but say أسلمنا. In this context, Islam is the basic acceptance of the testimony, and Iman is when it goes from an idea that is superficially in your consciousness to an idea that is now profoundly in your subconsciousness and is going to actually direct behavior. So it's going from one thing to the other. In this hadith, it's not vertical. It's not a hierarchy. It is horizontal. You need three things. You need the Islam piece. You have to know what it is that you should be doing. And he gives examples of the pillars of ritual. So to pray, siyam, give shahada, zakah, and hajj. The 4 or 5 things he points out, alayhi salatu wasalam, in the hadith. And then the other one is the theology, the iman. And that's why he points out the iman for you to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his kutub, his rusul, the day of judgment, wal qadari khayrihi wa sharrihi, understanding predestination, aspects of qadr. And then there's a third pillar of Islam. There's a third pillar of Islam, a third one. It's not just those two things. There's a third piece. This third piece has been historically left behind throughout Islamic education and within the way we raise our children, the way we talk about our deen, is the pillar of ihsan. And ihsan here is not excellence. It's not excellence, just like iman is not faith, just like Islam here is not the religion or submission. Here, these words are the terminology of these words are referring to the three basic categories of what it means to be Muslim. The first category is the practicum, what are you going to be doing? The second one is what you understand, meaning what is your belief, what values you carry. And then the third one is the spiritual. Third one is what's happening on the inside. It's how you're performing what you're performing, what's going inside of you. That's why he gives the example, and ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tara, meaning the relationship you have with Allah is so close, that's all that is left, is that you see Him. You are so close to Allah that all that is left is that you see Him. And you don't see Him in dunya, you see Him yawm al-qiyamah. وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. Right? But you don't see Him in dunya. But it's as if you see Him. I mean, there's nothing left. You have achieved a level of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your behaviors, in your deeds, that you almost see Him. But you're happy enough to know that He sees you. That third pillar of إصلاح حال القلب, the tazkiyah piece. That is a pillar of what Islam is. We have no right or ability to ignore it as an aspect of Islam. If we learn what Jibreel is teaching us, it's not two things. Most of us are happy with qawl wa amal, and that's fine from a theological perspective and from the arguments that we have from a theological background, and we talk about them in Aqidah in depth. But Islam is more than just a claim, meaning a theology, a basic understanding or comprehension of the universe and of God and who He is and what this whole story is about. And it's not just doing the acts, it's also the reasoning behind them. So this hadith, if you think about it, is just a continuation of the first one. The first one talked about intention, and the second hadith explained this is why he's talking about intention. It's because without that third pillar of knowing why you did what you did, having sincerity and genuineness, making sure you don't have ostentation, that you're not envious, that you're not hateful, that you're not doing things with secondary gain, looking for people to praise you, looking for people to accept you or validate you. How do you get that? That's not, no one can judge that. No one can judge that. I don't know. No one knows. And no one has the right to even assume anything about it. That's something between you and God. But it's a third pillar of this deen. As much as you spend time learning about Islam, meaning learning about how to pray and how to fast and how to give zakah, and just like you spend time understanding who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is and what predestination and qadr mean, and what is malaika and kutub and rusul, and understanding the theology, you have to spend an equal amount of time understanding ihsan, understanding tazkiyah, or else you're not doing this right. And that's what he taught, alayhi salam, this hadith. He taught many things. This hadith is worthy of a course on its own. Wallahi, I'm not exaggerating. Worthy of a course on its own, easily. But I think this is the main piece that most of us don't take time to think about, because it's very important. He's teaching a third pillar that we have learned to ignore, because this pillar is the most difficult of them all. This one is hard. No one wants to do that, because that actually requires inner change, and change on the inside is extremely annoying and difficult. So what is the significance of Jibreel coming the way he did and asking questions in that form? It did a couple of things. First of all, it drew the attention of the Sahaba. So this hadith was narrated to us by a number of them, not just by Umar. The most authentic chain came through Umar, but it came through Abu Hurairah and others as well. So people witnessed it. And it was interactive. The Prophet ﷺ received three basic questions. He offered three basic answers. And it gave us that comprehension that we have three things that we should know about. And the fourth one, asking about Yawm al-Qiyamah, is just wrapping it all together. All of this will become extremely relevant on the day that is coming near. How do you understand the three major categories of Islam, Iman, and Ihsan? I talked about that. That was the kind of the bulk of what we've been discussing. What do we do with the signs of the Day of Judgment? So very important. I'm going to do this quickly. It's for your own sake. The signs of the Day of Judgment, be careful with how much time in your life you spend contemplating them or going through them. Especially the prophecy-based ones, meaning the ones that are purely just stories of things that are going to occur. These don't have a lot of, they lack authenticity, they lack literal understandings, and they lack any backed up evidence from the Quran. Everything that you find in the 40 Nawawi, it's one of the reasons the 40 Nawawis are known. Every hadith in his book, rahmatullahi alayhi, is backed up by verse upon verse from the Quran, meaning they're Quranic concepts that the Prophet> paraphrased and came and explained to us in a way where it's a bit easier for us to comprehend. When you talk about the major signs and the stories of Ya'juj and Ma'juj and the stories of Isa and Mahdi, and you go through this will throw you off. There's a lot of discrepancy. There's a lot of difference of opinion on it, and there's zero gain. There is zero gain. I am not aware of any gain. Like, there's nothing to benefit from aside from getting a sense of laziness, because the idea becomes, well, since it's all going to happen that way anyways, then what I do doesn't matter. And there's nothing that is more un-Islamic than that concept. There's nothing more against what the Prophet ﷺ taught than you running into a position where you're like, I don't need to do much because this is what's going to happen anyways. Right? It's going to happen at some point. Yeah, well, maybe you misunderstood this whole story. So prophecies exist, and they exist for people who are stuck in a moment where that prophecy is occurring. It gives them the strength that they require. It's not for us to build strategy. We don't strategize an ummah based on these prophecies, and we don't make decisions based on these prophecies either. But really what you benefit from the signs of the days of judgment are the stuff the Prophet ﷺ point out in terms of what we can stop. Because the day of judgment is the day of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath. It's where tawbah is no longer accepted. Good or bad? Right? A bad thing. Right? It's not a good thing. We're not looking forward to it. We're not trying to bring it. We for sure are keeping keeping this nation going in the opposite direction of it as much as possible, because it's the day where we all lose our chances and we're in trouble. So we don't want it to happen. So when we're given it a sign that is preventable, we're being given that sign to prevent it. So when he said alayhi salatu wasalam, the two signs, and he gave the example of تَلِدُ الْأَمَةُ رَبَّتَهَا, which is uquq, or misuse of wealth, is so that we watch out that these are two things that will lead you down a path that will end up at the day of judgment. And that's why he talks about ignorance, alayhi salatu wasalam. He talks about murder, he talks about war, he talks about things that take us down that path to the day of judgment. Armageddon basically is these things. And we have the ability to prevent them, so we prevent them. And that's the point of learning the signs of the day of judgment. Very important piece for us to kind of. Why did Imam Bukhari narrate this hadith? I gave you because one of the narrators was not in rank 1 and 2, was rank 3, so he left him out. But there was nothing negative to say about him. Like there's he was not accused of anything. He just didn't rank 1 and 2 for reasons that were not character based. More time spent with teacher based. Imam Muslim accepted it, and a lot of other scholars did, but Imam Bukhari didn't, and that's fine. It doesn't mean that hadith is authentic. It just gives you examples of how they were very specific. And what are the relations between Islam and Iman? So there are different things. Either horizontal, as I explained in this hadith, they can be vertical, as I explained, and sometimes it can be interchangeable. You can use Islam and Iman and mean the same basic thing, mean the faith in general, whatever comes with it. And how do you know that? You have to have the context of what you're reciting in the Quran. That's why it's important. So if you don't have the context, you can make a lot of mistakes. You can read the word and not know what is meant by it, and then explain it or translate it, and then you walk people down a completely route that's not acceptable, which is why it's important to kind of know the differences between them. So that's what I wanted to share with you regarding this hadith. We'll end with that, inshallah ta'ala. The goal is, again, to cover 2 hadith per session, 10 sessions in total. The 10th session will be right after Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. If we're lucky and I'm able to slip in a hadith, a third one towards the end, because the hadith gets a bit shorter, then we'll keep it to 9 sessions. All you need to do is just, if you want to be a part, obviously, of the assessment and whatnot, is be in the Google Classroom, look at the announcements. I put in exactly what's required. The classwork has everything you need to know. Slides will have I don't ask anything outside of what I talk about. What I put in the slides, I update the slides as I go along. And inshallah there'll be maybe 1 or 2 assignments that I'll offer, and they'll just they're creative mostly in nature, and the exams are usually open book. So I just want to end with that. Inshallah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. You guys are welcome to go. You have questions? I'll take a few questions if people want to ask.
Yeah, so what do we mean by doing something for the sake of Allah?
Yeah, so that's why you have to spend some time studying tazkiyah and ihsan, because understanding that is not actually a simple answer. Like, I can't really sit here and just give you an answer that will make sense to you. You actually have to spend a certain amount of time exploring what your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. How many relationships do you have with supreme powers that you don't see? A lot of them? You have no experience in this. The only relationships you have are with creations that you see every day, people you can speak to, someone who can... Your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most important one, yet you have nothing to measure to it. You have no comparison. You don't have a relationship with a supreme power that is divine in nature that you've never seen before. So you have to explore, what does that relationship look like? You can't act like that you understand what that relationship means. If we act like it's normal, it's not normal. It's actually very, very different. It's very difficult. So being able to do something for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala requires you to understand Him in a much more profound manner, and understand what relationship you have with Him. So I can't, the point of this is not to leave you hanging, but to ask you, to give you reason to go and look into this more and build that so that you understand. When you say, I did this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that means something to you. Because you built a relationship that is meaningful to you, that has substance to it. Because most of the time it's just things we were taught, so we say, and we accept as maxims, but we don't actually have substance to it. So that's kind of what it was. But continue to do what you're doing, and don't stop what you're doing. Just explore this a little bit more for your own sake. Listen and learn more, because it's a pillar of Islamic law. Any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead.
So like the beginning of Arabic?
Yes, I think I put one in. I put in the classwork in Arabic. I will talk about all the classwork resources next time. I didn't want to do it all today because it'll be too long. But I'll do it next time, inshallah. But Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, rahimahullah, one of the great Maliki Shafi'i scholars, one of the few scholars early who actually had both madhab, he did a very short explanation in Arabic on Imam Nawawi. So it's there. In English, there's what's his name? Oh, subhanallah. I will look up his name. I forgot his name. He also did an explanation taken from majority taken from Sharh ibn Daqiq al-Eid and Ibn Uthaymeen and others, and he put it in English. So if you don't only read Arabic, you have one sharh to read, and if you read English, then you have another sharh to read, no problem. And then there's the videos that you can also access there. I don't care if you read. I will require you just to memorize 6 and swear that you did, and then after that will just be whatever explanation I offer here in the slides. And outside of that, I really don't ask for anything else. Inshallah.